This is a topic which comes up for me time and time again. We're talking about sequels which are better than the originals. And we may have touched on this slightly when I did my top 10 film franchises. So, anyway, I'm going to talk about some of the films which I think are better and maybe talk about some of the films which people claim are better than the original, but I don't think they are. So, anyway, let's start with something recent. Okay, I think The Dark Knight is a better film than Batman Begins. I think Nolan took what he did in Batman Begins and really just went in a completely different direction. You know, the first film feels like a sort of art house, a very sort of personal superhero film, and The Dark Knight is very much a crime thriller, much like Heat. And I just think that the performances, I think the complexity of the script, where it balances all of these characters together, the themes that it explores, the idea of what it is to be a truly good person, to be protective of others, and the way that everyone has a breaking point. The way it explored all of that was absolutely fantastic, and so I think it's a better film than Batman Begins. Another one which people talk about quite a lot is Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, being far superior to the first film. Sometimes I think it's slightly not really a fair comparison, because Evil Dead is an out and out horror film, and Evil Dead 2 isn't strictly a sequel. The first 20 odd minutes of Evil Dead 2 are basically a retread of the original film, because they couldn't get the rights to show the footage at the beginning of the film of Evil Dead as a sort of recap. So it's a pseudo sequel, it is kind of a sequel, but it's also a remake in some ways. Also, Evil Dead 2 is more of a comedy film than a horror film, and it's just a riot. I do love Evil Dead 2. I do think it's a better film. It is a better film. I think Sam Raimi had thrown away some of the immaturity of his filmmaking, but thankfully some of that was still there, which in some cases is the that immature exuberance, that energy which is in Evil Dead 2. That's what sort of makes it. But I think there were, as much as I love Evil Dead, there are some things in it which perhaps, technically speaking, it's not as well made as Evil Dead 2. But I think the reason why I'm so fond of the original Evil Dead is because of what it represents. It's a sort of independent film. Bunch of young people decided to go out, get funding, and just go and do it, and they broke into the movie industry, and I think it's fantastic for that. But all in all, Evil Dead 2 just has everything: comedy, horror, slapstick, action, adventure. It just has absolutely everything. So I think it is a better film than the original one. Another one which comes up often is Godfather Part 2. Now I'm going to argue against that here. I'm going to say that I don't think I can really choose between Godfather and Godfather Part 2. I think one of the reasons people automatically say that Godfather Part 2 is better is just because it's a sprawling epic, whereas Godfather Part 1 isn't really. It's a personal story about a family, and about the downfall of a family, about the decisions that we make. But that is expanded upon in the second film, and stylistically the second film is very different to the original as well. I think Godfather Part 1 works as a self-contained story. I'm not always convinced that Godfather Part 2 works as well if you haven't watched the original Godfather, and so I'm not saying Godfather's better than Part 2. I'm saying that I think they're on a par with one another. I couldn't choose between them. I think they're both absolutely fantastic for different reasons. One which people say quite a lot. I mean, I looked before I did this video. I looked on top tens and things like that of sequels that people think are better than the originals. The number of people that said Aliens, and I remember when I did my Aliens review and analysis series, a lot of people said as well that they thought Aliens was a better film than Alien. I completely disagree with that. I love Aliens, right? If you asked me when I was a kid, I would have said Aliens hands down is a better film. But I think time has shown that Alien is almost high art. It's beautiful. It's a thing of beauty, and there are very rare really films which actually get to that level and are just so incredibly crafted. And I think that's what stands Alien above probably everything else in its genre. Aliens, I think, is more of a schlocky film, but not in a bad way. I think it's a roller coaster. I love it. I think it's fantastic. If someone said to me Aliens is one of the best films ever made, I would say yeah, probably is. I just think that Alien is a better film. I think it's better made, and I think it's more original. I think Aliens retreads a lot of stuff that went on in some earlier films. I think Alien, perhaps with the exception of, I know Planet of the Vampires and the Terror from Beyond Space, yes, it does retread some things, but in so many ways it's so visceral. So, and it works, in so many different levels. But I've talked about the Alien films enough. But anyway, I think Alien's better than Aliens. A lot of people say they think that's a better sequel. If we talk about other franchises like Star Wars, the common argument is that Empire Strikes Back is the best sequel, or is the best film within the franchise. I can't really argue against that. I think it is the best film. I think it is a better film than A New Hope. But there's something magical about A New Hope, and I don't know if it's just because it's the first Star Wars film, but there is a playfulness about the original Star Wars film, which I think pulls us through some of the sketchy dialogue and some of the dodgy performances at times. Everyone was great in Star Wars, but there were moments, little lines here and there, which I think gave away that some of the people who were working on the film weren't that experienced. But I really love A New Hope, but I think Empire Strikes Back is a better film. A lot of people make fun of Return of the Jedi. I think Return of the Jedi is probably better than A New Hope as well, to be honest. I think it's just that Return of the Jedi suffers from two things. It has a conceit about underdeveloped, technologically speaking, people's overcoming a more technologically advanced civilizations and the Ewoks, and you either buy into that, you buy into the Ewoks, or you don't. If you don't buy into them, then it can really harm the film for you. And the second thing, the problem is that Return of the Jedi is split down the middle. It's a film with two halves. Jabba's palace, which has nothing to do with the main story, it takes up half the film, and then you have the rest of Return of the Jedi, which is just epic, with the showdown between Luke and Darth Vader. Another one, I'm starting to talk about films which aren't better sequels, but that doesn't really matter, does it? I think The Terminator is better than Terminator 2. I think when Terminator 2 came out, everybody thought it was better than the original film. Cameron did what he did with Aliens. He took a film which was more horror orientated and turned it into a sort of action film. Terminator 2 is a fantastic action movie, but I think The Terminator has a grittiness to it, has a reality to it, it has a noirish sort of feel to it as well, which I think puts it above a great many other films within its genre, and certainly puts it above its sequel as good as Terminator 2 is. Alright, let's talk about sequels which I do think are better than the originals. The Man with No Name trilogy is interesting. Sergio Leone, I love that trilogy of films. I think they're all fantastic. There are some critics of Fistful of Dollars, the first film. Yes, it's a retread of Yojimbo or Red Harvest. Yes, it's nowhere near as complex. It's nowhere near as well executed, and it just doesn't have the depth of For a Few Dollars More and Good, the Bad and the Ugly. But it's still a very good film. But I do believe that For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad and the Ugly are better films. I think that which one out of the two of them, For a Few Dollars More and Good, the Bad and the Ugly, which one out of them are better, I think is up for debate actually. A lot of people just dismiss that debate right away and say The Good, the Bad and the Ugly is a far better film. I actually change my opinion every time I watch a film. I watched Good, the Bad and the Ugly most recently, and I would say it's the best of the trilogy. but I know that I'll go and watch For a Few Dollars More and then think that it's better than Good, the Bad and Ugly. I think both films are just absolutely phenomenal, and I think For a Few Dollars More gives us, this sort of Lee Van Cleef character as one of the greatest protagonists in any Western. He's so cool, he's just got it together, and he's fighting the good fight. Whereas, you're not really too sure about the Man with No Name sometimes, who he is and what his morals are. So yeah, that's like a sequels. I'm trying to think of, I had a big list in my head of other sequels. I think the Hammer films, some people argue that Prince of Darkness, etc., is better than the original Horror of Dracula. I wouldn't really say that, to be honest. I think Horror of Dracula is better, and I'm really struggling now to remember the other ones. Okay, so I think I've mentioned enough sequels. Ones which people claim are often, better than the originals, and and I would say that there are ones out there which are better than the original films which they followed. So which films do you think are better than the predecessors, and why? I would really love to know, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks for watching.